Welcome to the Bald Brad Show. Our lead story of the day is regarding a CNN panel getting upset and all up in arms over two Republicans, Nikki Haley and Tim Scott, for denying that systemic racism exists. Before we get into any other theatrics from CNN, support a true American patriot by hitting that like and subscribe button. Leave us a short, sweet comment down below. The question for you all is, do you think systemic racism exists today? Let us know in the comment section below. Also, be sure to check out baldbrad.com, where we have our merchandise as well as copies of our book, Trojan Horse, How the Left is Destroying America. You're seeing it in real time, folks. All the links are in the description below. And if you really want to go above and beyond, become a true American patriot yourself by hitting the join tab and joining our community of Republicans and conservatives. We would love to have you. Well, just yesterday, there was this CNN panel that completely blasted Senator Tim Scott of South Carolina and former United Nations ambassador of Donald Trump, Nikki Haley, for denying that systemic racism exists. And I'm also in their camp. I don't think systemic racism exists today. I believe it did in the past, and I think someone would be a little bit silly to deny that systemic racism happened in the past. But the Democrat Party and the progressive left are still of the notion that systemic racism is thriving today. So during CNN this morning, the host talked about Scott and Haley firing back at former President Barack Obama after Obama himself took a swipe at them for not being, quote, serious about addressing systemic racism. The former South Carolina Republican governor, Haley, tweeted, quote, Barack Obama sent minorities back by singling them out as victims instead of empowering them. In America, hard work and personal responsibility matter. My parents didn't raise me to think that I would forever be a victim. They raised me to know that I was responsible for my success. And absolutely right. Nikki Haley's a minority. She's also Indian. Tim Scott's a minority. He's African American or black. Well, while Scott said Obama, quote, missed an opportunity to unite the country, and he repeated what he's been saying, that the truth of his life disproves the lies of the radical left. Correct. It's astonishing to me that people like Barack Obama and others, like Malcolm Nance, sit there as president of the United States or a reporter, journalist on television, like Don Lemon of CNN or previously of CNN, and they will say that systemic racism out there and black people can't succeed because they're being oppressed by some nameless, faceless, shadowy figure out there. But yet you are literally president of the United States that somehow beat out that systemic racism out there. And they've written books, by the way. I've never seen in any of their books how they beat out this oppression, how they beat out this systemic racism, so you can help other minorities or people of color beat out that very system that you did that you're saying is oppressing everybody else. It's astonishing to me. It's absolutely astonishing. It's this makeshift reality that they're constantly portraying and creating so that people are oppressing, having that victim mentality. And I love that Nikki Haley and Tim Scott are rising up saying, look, this is a bunch of bogus stuff. Well, we have a clip here from CNN from that panel of just the other day. Let's go ahead and roll it.
How the Republican Party deals with race and deals with the conversation about race and, frankly, the history of this country. And they really pushed back, both Tim Scott and Nikki Haley. And I think we have a tweet from Nikki Haley saying that, tweeting in part, Obama set minorities back by singling them out as victims instead of empowering them. Tim Scott arguing Obama missed an opportunity here to unite the country as America's first black president. This was very strong pushback on this idea that there needs to be a real conversation, right? Which is really what the former president was getting at, and he has yet to see it.
Right.
Does that work?
No, because the proof is in the pudding, right? Like Tim Scott, right? Like it took 100 years from Reconstruction to his election to get an African-American Republican from the South represented in the Senate. That's not by accident, that's by design. And for him to not acknowledge that design as part of his story is really unfortunate. And what's even more unfortunate is when you look at that quote from that tweet from Governor Haley, Ambassador Haley, the pronoun them, distancing herself from minorities despite being a racial minority herself reveals a lot more about her understanding of how she factors into race in this country, more so than Obama's impact on minorities or how minorities view themselves in general.
Their comments are very revealing because the assertion that systemic discrimination does not exist against minorities and against women is maybe the defining, unifying belief of the Republican coalition in the Trump era.
It's amazing. And the Democrats are never going to stop peddling this stuff. And I think Candace Owens of the Daily Wire, previously with Charlie Kirk, of Turning Point USA kind of puts it in a great way of, and I guess Dinesh D'Souza also writes this in a lot of his books, and he talks about it on his podcast a lot, is that there's more of an ideological plantation, an ideological viewpoint from the Democrat Party nowadays, where they're oppressing minorities and people of color through their ideology in creating this victim mentality. Before it was actual oppression through systemic racism in the past by the Democrat Party, by the way. I know we love to not teach that in history, that it was the Democrat Party that oppressed black people. It was the Democrat Party, the Ku Klux, Democrat Party of slavery. It was the Democrat Party that didn't want to push all this stuff in. That it was the Republicans that freed the blacks, freed the slaves, freed a lot of people here in America, because it wasn't just blacks that were slaves. It was all sorts of ethnicities and races. For a whole nother video, by the way, before I get on a whole random tangent about United States history. But speaking about United States history, it's all designed. It was all designed for this to happen. The design of the United States was from the founding fathers to first get rid of slavery. That's what Thomas Jefferson originally wanted to put in the Declaration of Independence. But it was either the decision of, hey, have a country and slowly or hopefully quickly get rid of slavery at some point in the future. So they knew in order to have a country and have people sign on to have a country, that they needed to remove that snippet out and ultimately progress as a country later on. But we always leave this out of the conversation, that in the overarching viewpoint, in the overarching picture, the bird's eye view, the holistic view of this country, the whole purpose of one of the mechanisms was to get rid of slavery so that everybody can be free. That's why they put all men are created equal. Thomas Jefferson talks about this in his writings. There's many people that understand this viewpoint. Hell, Frederick Douglass talked about this as well. Abraham Lincoln talked about it. I mean, it's not like a false reality out there of this was never constructed or understood by people. Everybody understood that this was going to happen. It just took some time to do so. A lot of people died on the battlefield during the Civil War to allow this to happen so that black people could be freed. But it's never talked about between Democrats and Republicans. It's always North versus South or South versus North, however you want to viewpoint or portray that picture. It's never talked about that. But they're still going to sit there and say that systemic racism exists. If you wanted to create an argument for systemic racism, I'd say the best argument you could probably create today would be affirmative action, where literally the color of your skin, your race itself, gets you in a position ahead of others. Again, because of your race, not because of your successes like Nikki Haley talked about, not because of your qualifications, but because of your race. You want to see affirmative action in action? Look at Karine Jean-Pierre, has no business to be on that podium. It's because she's part of the LGBTQ community and she's black. I don't know if she's African American, because I don't know if she's actually from Africa, but she's black. She's not good at her job. It has nothing to do with her race, by the way. Zero iota has anything to do with her race. She's just bad at it. And so when you limit something predicated based on race, you're limiting the pool in which you can actually pull from. You saw this with Ketanji Brown Jackson, Supreme Court Justice, where literally she was a woman and she's black, and that was the pool because she was a woman or black. It wasn't, hey, let's just see what's best fit out there. Let's see who can go out and do a blind drawing based on their qualifications. No. It has to be strictly based on race. It's wild to me that the Democrat Party is still pushing this idea. But that's what they're going to do. And now they're creating a whole milieu, a whole environment for young people that they think that they're oppressed. And you see this as a teacher all the time. There's kids that don't even think they need to try in school because there's some nameless, facially shadowy figure out there that's going to oppress them automatically when they leave high school or middle school. It's baffling to me. And so they don't even try. They just give up and go, what's the point? What's the point because I'm not going to get a good job? Or what's the point because I'm not going to get into a good university because of my color, my skin? That's an insane ideology to push. And what they want to do is continue to push it because they want to basically create a makeshift reality for you to think that you're a victim so that you vote Democrat and have to continue to rely on the Democrat Party to be quote unquote successful. And I understand successful is kind of its own subjective term because you don't have to make a lot of money. You don't have to have certain things to be successful in your own mind. You might have certain things that you think you can inherit based on your qualifications or based on your successes in life to be successful. Some people make very little money and they're happy just living the life that they're having and they think they're living the American dream that way. That's completely fine. There's those that are wealthy as well that think they're living the American dream and they're extremely successful. Success is all predicated purely on subjective stuff. Well, without going on more of a tangent here, the Los Angeles Times opinion columnist LZ Granderson said the pushback didn't work and said that it's unfortunate Scott doesn't acknowledge that systemic racism is what led to it taking 100 years to get the Republican African-American from the South elected to the Senate. Nobody's denying, again, that it didn't happen in the South. We're talking about today. We are talking about today. Nobody, for the most part, As far as I'm aware of, there's no system out there that's oppressing black people. If there are, you got to name out that system, and not just the system itself, but who created the system, who's within that system, what mechanisms in that system are oppressing people. Because if you notice, they always go, oh, there's redlining in the past. Or what about Jim Crow laws? Yes, that's in the past. We're talking about today. The past was the past. There's a lot that we can learn from it, but we're talking about today. If you're a person of color, watches the show, and I know there are people that are people of color, minorities, and all that stuff, great. You're not oppressed. There's racism out there. Nobody's denying that racism is gone. This isn't talking about just racism. This is systemic racism. Meaning there's organizations, there's corporations, there's laws in the books, according to them, that are oppressing people of color and keeping them down and creating victims. It's wild to me. For example, it only takes one generation to get out of poverty. People are going to have to sacrifice. I'm not saying any of this is easy by any means. But if you go to Vanguard, Charles Schwab, these places of investment where you can actually put your money into the market, if they sit there and deny you, I mean, they could deny you for many reasons, but if they deny you, go to another place and go to another place. If everybody's denying you, then yeah, maybe you have a case for systemic racism, but I don't believe that's actually existing. I don't believe it's happening. But you can be successful in terms of monetary wealth. You can be successful in terms of your job, whatever it may be. And I know a lot of people here are on board with what I'm saying, or at least I would think. Let me know in the comment section below if you're not. But it's just mind-blowing to me that we live in 2023 and people are still pushing this message based on something that happened, before I was even alive. I mean, they're still pushing, slavery this, slavery that, reparations. None of them were slaves. And I'm saying them because there's even white people that were slaves. There's black people that were slaves. Native Americans that were slaves. I mean, it's just it's so astonishing to me that we're still pushing this whole makeshift reality. Mind-blowing. Quote, and what's even more unfortunate is when you look at the tweet from Governor Haley, Ambassador Haley, the pronoun them, distancing herself from minorities despite being a racial minority herself, reveals a lot more about her understanding of how she factors into race in this country, more so than Obama's impact on minorities or how minorities view themselves in general. Well, he completely missed her book called With All Due Respect, where she goes in depth about her successes, in depth about her upbringing, in depth about her family and how her family overcame many obstacles, not just in the country from which they were, but the country in which they are now, which is America, and how she became successful through not having a victim mentality. As I mentioned, in the school system and out there are people out there in the ether that think they're an actual victim. And it's through that having that mentality that they're not successful. It's not them not being successful because of systemic racism. It's them not being successful because they have that oppression mentality, that victim mentality, based on some mythos that was created by the Democrat Party and the progressive left that's still going on today. CNN senior political analyst Ron Brownstein said both Haley and Scott's comments were very revealing because the assertion that systemic discrimination now, it wasn't racism, now it's discrimination, does not exist against minorities and against women, and is defining. Maybe the defining unifying belief of the Republican coalition in the Trump era. It's amazing how they're trying to correlate discrimination and racism. Doing a little flip-flop there, by the way, in that video. Just kind of sliding under the rug because there's no difference between discrimination and racism. I understand there's a Venn diagram in which they overlap, but it's astonishing here that they're continually trying to paint Trump as a racist. They're continually trying to paint Trump, the MAGA supporters, these extremist Republicans, and being racist, and we want to oppress black people. It's insane. I can't be any more clear with the words that I'm saying. If you're black, you're a person of color, if you're a minority, hell, I don't care who you are, gay, black, white, Asian, Hispanic, small person, I don't care. I want you to be successful, really successful in this country, and you can be. You can be. You just have to make a sequence of good decisions, not just one or two good decisions. Possibly could happen. You need to make a series of good decisions, and you can. You can be extremely successful in this country. You just got to put your mind to it. I'm not saying it's going to be easy. There's a lot of people that push back on me. I'm not saying there's a system out there that's oppressing me, but if you're going to claim that there's systemic racism out there, you have to name the system. You just shouting, there's racism out there in the ether. How does that solve anything? How does that help anything? I don't understand. Like, who the hell can help you? I don't like racism. I think it's evil. I think it's terrible. I'm part of the Republican Party that eradicated freaking slavery. I am for getting rid of evil. I don't like evil. So if somebody is racist, I don't like them. I don't want them to be around. So we have to distance ourselves from them. But if you're going to shout that there's racism out there, there's some sort of system of oppression out there against black people or people of color, whatever it may be, name what system it is, please. Because if you're going to say, well, it was redlining, that doesn't exist anymore. Well, if it does, it's illegal. You can't do it. And there's a massive lawsuit on your hands. Now you can be really successful. And well, but what is it? They always say, oh, well, there's a system out there. Well, what corporation then? Because corporations just made up of people. Who in that system, or in other words, who in that corporation that created a system within that corporation that is oppressing people of color or minority people? Who is it? Name them. But they never can. They just love to shout big slogans because that's what they do. They just shout big slogans without actually solving anything. You can't solve a problem if you don't know what the freaking problem is. I have a textbook. Hey, there's a bunch of problems in here. Solve them. Well, which one do you want me to solve? Like, be specific. Well, I don't know. Just there's math problems in there. Solve it. Yeah, but which ones do you want me to solve? I don't know. It's there's problems in there. Solve it. It's just amazing to me. I mean, it's a terrible analogy. It's a really rough analogy that I just painted, but I think you understand what I'm trying to say nonetheless. If you're going to sit there and say there's a problem, name the problem, who created the problem, how to solve the problem, what underlyings are within that problem. I mean, be specific on this stuff. They never are. They never are. They just shout systemic racism. Folks, do you think systemic racism exists today? Let us know in the comment section below. Well, moving into a wild segment here. It's very short, but you have Secretary of State Anthony Blinken stated that the United States does not support Taiwan's independence after meeting with Chinese President Xi Jinping on Monday. This is insane. I mean, he's clear about it. We had a video clip. He literally just said it outright. It wasn't like, oh, you got to read between the lines. You will hear in the clip, he literally just says it outright. So Blinken was in Beijing to warm U.S. relations with China, which have become strained in recent years over several issues, including Taiwan. But we do not support Taiwan independence, Blinken said. Exact quote. We do not support Taiwan independence. Blinken said at a press conference after his meeting with the Chinese president in Beijing, we remain opposed to any unilateral changes to the status quo by either side. I mean, why don't we just hear it from the horse's mouth from Blinken saying this stuff, which is just, it's so astonishing that this is by, but it's a Democrat Party for you folks. The same people that want to sit there and push freedom, which rightfully so, and say all these things are against a country that fled from Maoist China. I believe they were the nationalists that went to Taiwan to be free and liberated themselves. It's astonishing.
On Taiwan, I reiterated the long-standing U.S. One China policy. That policy has not changed. It's guided by the Taiwan Relations Act, the 3 joint communiques, the 6 assurances. We do not support Taiwan independence. We remain opposed to any unilateral changes to the status quo by either side. We continue to expect the peaceful resolution of cross-strait differences. On Taiwan, our
Man, there's a lot here. I mean, you almost got to pick and choose what you want to unpack because there's different ideas of what could be taking place. We've talked a lot here on the Bald Brad Show, and we've actually released audio and footage of this stuff, of the Chinese government, the military itself, having audio and stuff leaked out there that's talking about them, and documents too, about them invading Taiwan, how they were going to do it, and how quickly they were going to do it. When we started the Bald Brad Show about 2.5 years, there was actually, I think it was a general or commander of the United States military that actually warned his forces here that expect an invasion of Taiwan to happen within the next 2 to 5 years or something like that. He actually got reprimanded for it. We also seen where China's gone so far to actually detail out every single part of their plan to invade Taiwan to the point where they were talking about provinces going under and that they actually needed to build up these provinces in China because if they went down, those were kind of the mechanisms to supply whatever invasion was going to take place. And once those go down, the invasion is going to be cut off. So all this stuff has been leaked. It's been known that they're going to do this. So I'm curious of, Xi's like, hey, you know what? Biden's weak as heck. Look what Putin's doing with Ukraine. Nobody's really stopping that guy. We're dead serious about invading Taiwan. And we got a lot of dirt on Joe Biden. So why don't you come out and say that Taiwan's not going to have their independence? You believe in one China? And I think we're good for a few more years. I'm curious what you all think about that idea and kind of that conspiracy, if that's what you want to call it. I don't have any information to prove that, but I find it interesting that all this stuff's coming out about Joe Biden, Hunter Biden with Burisma, and somehow, I'm trying to be careful with my words here, my language, receiving, I guess we will say, $5 million each for policy implications with Burisma, natural gas company, and getting into the market of the United States and others. I mean, there's a huge allegation taking place here, and I just find it odd that Joe Biden's family also received $3 million or more from the Chinese government. I also find it odd that when we were under COVID and we're having issues with supply chain, especially oil, that somehow like 1 million barrels or more was being sold to China, where it just so happens Hunter Biden had business dealings in the same province, in the same area. Go figure how that one works out. So there's a lot of connections here with the Biden family and the Chinese government that I find it odd that you have the cojones to come out and say that, you know, Taiwan doesn't have their independence, especially after we said, look, you go into Taiwan, we're going to sit there and, you know, we're going to have some issues here. So there's a lot of pull and tug here, which you didn't really have under the Trump administration. Nobody's going to F around with Trump. Putin wasn't going to invade Ukraine. China wasn't going to invade Taiwan or pull any of the shenanigans they're doing. But now when you got a weak president that falls up a flight of stairs, he falls downstairs, he trips over a rock, he trips over a blade of grass, he tripped over a sandbag on stage during a graduation ceremony, he fumbles through his words. I mean, hell, if you haven't seen that video of the two knuckleheads, Democrats, what is it, Joe Biden and Fetterman, standing right next to each other, can you get more of a symbol of what the Democrat Party looks like today, with Fetterman on the mic fumbling through his words? Granted, he has a medical condition, and then you have Joe Biden, who I guess has a medical condition as well, that sits there and fumbles through his words. I mean, they're both standing on stage next to each other. It literally sums up the Democrat Party for you and where they're at today. I mean, the other person that you would have would be number 3, right? You would have Hillary Clinton coughing all the time and passing out and having to be freaking chauffeured into a van by Secret Service, whoever her handlers were. It's astonishing who the Democrats vote for, but nobody wants to talk about that. You literally had Dianne Feinstein practically being chauffeured out on a gurney like Joe Biden is, but if you want to see a future of Joe Biden, look at Dianne Feinstein. I'm not trying to make fun of her. I mean, it's terrible what she's going through, but she's hanging in there. She's still holding her position, but just look who the Democrats are for. Look who the Democrats put in office. Nancy Pelosi. Can't tell whether she's smiling or not. Dentures are going to fall out of her face. I mean, we're going on a huge long tangent here, and forgive me, it's just astonishing to me that you have the cojones here as a Democrat Party to come out and say you're not going to support Taiwan even after years. America is we're a country of freedom and independence, and now you're going to say, well, we don't believe that they should have their independence. So wild. Can't believe we live in this era and this time. The Secretary of State met with President Xi for about 35 minutes at the Great Hall. Ooh, that's a lot of time. Of the people on the west side of the Tiananmen Square. Blinken reiterated that the long-standing U.S. One China policy has not changed. China holds that there is a One China that includes Taiwan as a Chinese territory and has considered annexing Taiwan by force. I mean, major consideration, by the way. A lot of people think it's going to happen even with the next couple of years here. I've been saying that for the last 2.5 years. The U.S. maintains informal diplomatic relations with Taiwan. You got to love that word, informal diplomatic relations. I mean, Nancy Pelosi... for whatever she's worth, had some sort of relation with Taiwan, and the Chinese government lost their minds. Blinken added that the U.S. remains committed to its responsibility under the Taiwan Relations Act, which includes making sure Taiwan has the ability to defend itself. That's an interesting... Well, if they're independent, or rather, if you don't believe in their independence, I should say, and you think it's One China policy, then what would they have to defend themselves from? It's just China. China's just flying a few hundred military planes over them to bomb them to smithereens. But why? They're all One China policy. What are you talking about, Blinken? Yeah. Includes that Taiwan has the ability to defend itself. Oh, okay, come on. During the meeting, Blinken said that he raised U.S. concerns about China's provocation actions in the waters around Taiwan. How about not just the waters? How about you talk about the air? You got to love that he had a 35-minute meeting with Xi. And he's talking about Taiwan, but the Chinese government is literally flying balloons over many countries, like in the 40s of countries. But they fly one from mainland China all the way to the United States. You know what Joe Biden said about that? He's literally on camera. He's being interviewed by the press. And he talks about how, the Chinese government didn't really know it was happening. It was a mistake, is basically, I'm paraphrasing. It was a mistake by the Chinese government. They didn't really know. The leaders had no idea. And they didn't really, they weren't really sure like what they were getting. And they didn't really have good communications from the spy balloon that was flying across. Astonishing from the president. And he goes, they were a little embarrassed that we shot it out of the sky. Really? You're not embarrassed, Joe, that you waited till it flew over the entire United States to shoot it out of the sky? You're not embarrassed at all that you didn't even catch this thing? And that you spent like $500,000 and we missed a balloon out of the sky? I understand it's probably, it's not even small. It's a massive balloon, but we're not embarrassed. No. The fact that you shot 3 other objects out of the sky as well, no information on that, you guys. We were told by John Kirby that, it's in rough terrain, we can't get it. When has it ever been an issue of like rough terrain? You're telling me there's no guys that we have trained that could sit there and go through rough terrain to gather some sort of intelligence that supposedly was spying on us? I think it was embarrassing. I think it was a party balloon. That's what I think. I think it's some kid's 8th birthday. You got Spider-Man party balloon flying over the skies. And Joe Biden, because he's cognitively inept to do his job, shot it out of the sky and spent $1 million missile. That's what I think happened. But, conspiracy theory, who the hell knows? We'll never find out. We don't find out anything from this government anymore. Well, we and many others have deep concerns about some of the provocative actions that China has taken in recent years, going back to 2016. Interesting they're going back to only 2016. Why aren't you going back to Obama administration? It's weird how you always stop at the Trump administration. You guys notice that? Like anything that's spoken of goes back just to the Trump administration. Prime example, illegal immigration. with caging families, caging children and families, right? You're separating them, you're ripping them out of the arms was the conversation at hand from the Democrat Party and the progressive left, as well as the Biden administration and Karine Jean-Pierre. And it was Jen Psaki who said that most, I guess, quote unquote, recently. You're ripping them out of the arms of the children. Trump was doing it. No, it was coming from the Obama administration. You can't really even blame Obama. He was kind of executing the laws on the books because that's his job as the executive branch. But no, he was doing it too, but you don't want to talk about that. Joe Biden actually still does it, but nobody wants to talk about that. I mean, there was more people in cages under the Biden administration right now than there was under the Trump administration. Nobody wants to talk about that. It's astonishing that AOC's not back down there saying, oh, they're drinking out of toilets when the water fountain's connected to the toilet. And by the way, our drinking water is the same as our toilet water. It's the best water. It's the best water you can drink out of, folks. The American institutions, the American freedom of water. The best water you can drink. You can't do that in any other country. Not mocking Trump. I love the man. I'll probably vote for him again. But I'm just saying, it's astonishing, the spinaroo and all the stuff that's coming out from this administration. Well, and the reason that this is a concern for so many countries, not just the United States, is that there were it were to be a crisis over Taiwan. The likelihood is that it would produce an economic crisis that could affect quite literally the entire world. I mean, you might be talking about World War III if something like that might happen. That was a question I proposed many, many times, and maybe a great question for all of you in the comment section below. Do you think that we should protect Taiwan if China does invade it? Because there's a possibility of a World War III at that point. Are you willing to send Americans, guys my age, me probably, as well as a lot of other men and women, to a world war with a new axis that's basically being created with Russia and China and others? Is that what we should do for a small island like Taiwan to conserve their independence from China, of which the Democrat Party and Joe Biden don't believe should be had? In the comment section below. I'm really curious on this, folks. I really am. Blinken referenced the high level of commercial container traffic that goes through the Taiwan Strait every day, as well as the high percentage of semiconductors that are manufactured in Taiwan. Well, hopefully we can get that under wraps here, but who the hell knows? You got the CHIP Act, I think Joe Biden signed, which might be a good thing. We will have to see. And if it is a good thing, we'll be sure to sit here and announce it on the Ball Brad Show that it was a good thing. And I think we need to have more manufacturing here in the United States. The problem is you have these unions that sit there and outcompete the private sector. I shouldn't say this, the private sector, but they outcompete themselves on a global level. And so we have to outsource a lot of this manufacturing because we can get it for cheaper. People aren't going to buy expensive products. They have trouble even maintaining a checkbook right now. They have trouble paying their bills. They want stuff cheap. And if you build it here in America, I love America, build by America, and I will support it. And I do shell out more money to buy an American product over any other product, but it is more expensive and people struggle with that. And so if we're going to do it here, I'm not even saying you should subsidize it. Because subsidizing is just you paying more at the end of the day through taxes and other means. We got to figure this out. But if you unionize something, I'm not saying you need to unionize it, but if you're going to build it here in the United States, it's going to be a little bit more expensive. Build America, make America great again, folks. You got to support American products. So if as a result of a crisis that was taken offline, it would have a dramatic consequence for virtually every country around the world. I mean, it already has, right? The chips through this supply chain issue are just screwed. I mean, you have thousands of trucks sitting in the desert. I don't know if you guys seen video footage of that. Thousands of trucks and cars just sitting out there in the desert from like 2020 to 2022. I'm still waiting for that bubble to pop, by the way, where it's like, yeah, we have too many vehicles. Hell, the price has really dropped. I'll buy myself a car. I have never had a new car. I've always bought used. You should always buy used, by the way. There's a little bit of a financial advice for y'all, but it's just wild here of like, well, it could have virtually massive consequences for every country. Yeah. How about like every country in terms of death, not just like manufacturing supply chain issues, just the fact that you might enter a world war on this as some serious crap. And you have the cojones to come out and say, well, we don't really support Taiwan's independence. I mean, it goes on and on, folks, about this whole thing, but I would love to know what you think about this in the comment section below. Do you think we should protect Taiwan if they do invade, if they get invaded by China? Let me know in the comment section below. Well, ending off here, it's not just conservatives that are being censored. You also have Democrats that are being censored. I find it odd, and I feel like there's some sort of conspiracy here that I want to talk about. I love conspiracy theories. I don't necessarily believe in them, but I love at least hearing them out. We'll get to it in just one moment, but you have Robert F. Kennedy Jr. here being censored by YouTube for talking about something that I don't agree with, by the way, but I think he should have a right to say it. So the social media giant YouTube took down an interview of Democrat presidential candidate Robert F. Kennedy Jr., claiming that chemicals in the water are turning kids transgender. On Sunday, both Kennedy and a podcast host, Jordan Peterson, tweeted that the video sharing website had taken down their interview for an episode of Peterson's show and accused the social media platform of censorship, and interfering with a presidential campaign. I mean, I thought we weren't supposed to do things like that. I thought maybe this is another Russian hoax. Maybe the Russians took it down, you guys. Maybe the Russians were spying on Americans or whatever the hell it was. Maybe it's the Chinese again, who knows. But what do you think? Should social media platforms censor presidential candidates? No, I don't think so. Kennedy asked on Twitter. My conversation with Peterson was deleted by YouTube. And it's not the only time he's been censored by these big tech companies. And here's where I think the conspiracy theory comes in. I think there's people that have been in government for so long, like Joe Biden, Hillary Clinton, mainly them too. You also have Nancy Pelosi and others that have been in government literally their entire lives. And I think that they have these people out there within government that sit there and have basically their tentacles out and everywhere in all institutions that are sitting there and censoring people that go against them or have the people that potentially put them out of office. And the reason why I say this, and it kind of comes from the deep state, maybe that's what more I'm referring to here. I'm kind of ad-libbing as I go, is Jason Chaffetz, who used to be a representative, a congressman of Utah, wrote a book again called The Deep State. And he was kind of talking about when Hillary Clinton was in office, there's a lot of when Benghazi was taking place with Trey Gowdy, who was a congressman from, I think, South Carolina, on the Intelligence Committee with Jason Chaffetz as well. And they were kind of talking about the deep state. And Jason Chaffetz, who was the chairman of the Oversight Committee, saying that he would go on undisclosed planes to make sure that nobody could stop him in other countries. Nobody knew where he was, not even his own wife, not his own age. Nobody knew. On an undocumented plane, nobody had a clue where he was going. And suits would show up in the exact location before he would even get there. Nobody knew the location. Nobody knew how he was going to get there. Somehow they found out about the location and would stop him from going into a place where he was legally allowed to be. So I think there's these elites out there. I think there's some sort of thing going on, potentially, where they're trying to stop people from competing against Joe Biden. When did we see this? Bernie Sanders. Bernie Sanders was out really quick. And who was it? It was the Democrat Party. Bernie Sanders was out real quick. And now you're kind of seeing it here with Mr. Kennedy. But luckily, you could watch it on here, Twitter. Thank you, Elon Musk. I mean, it's amazing how Elon Musk sits there and rises to the occasion once again, making sure people have a free speech platform where the Democrat Party is supposedly for the Constitution, but doesn't want free speech because it's hateful. It's hurtful to you. It's a disgrace. If you don't like it, guess what you could do? As we always say as adults, what do we say to our kids, folks? If you don't like something, what can you do with that channel? You turn it off. You could switch it. If you don't want to watch it, then don't watch it. I don't understand. If people don't like something, why do they have to go, well, I don't like that? Okay, then don't watch it. I mean, we have people in the comments and in the show here going, I don't like your show. I don't like this or that. Okay, I understand. Like, that's fine. Don't watch it. It's not for everybody. It's a hobby. I don't do this for money. I'm not a corporation. I just have fun doing it. I love hanging out with the community that we do have that does want to watch it because we have a blast having and doing this. We have a great community here. Hit that join tab if you haven't already. Hit the join tab if you want to become a patriot. We would love your support. But there's people out there that it's just astonishing. They go, well, I don't like that. I don't like that show. Okay, well, don't watch it then. It's not a big deal. There's a ton of other content out there that you can watch. If you don't like Kennedy, then don't listen to him. If you don't like Donald Trump, then don't listen to him. If you don't like Joe Biden, then don't listen to him. I don't like Joe Biden, but I do a show here. I find it hilarious of him fumbling through his words trying to get a coherent thought out. It's like gambling. Do you think he's going to be able to get through a sentence this go around? I don't think so, but let's figure it out. Let's see. Maybe you can help me figure out what misinformation was in this interview. I mean, I'll be honest, I don't agree with what Kennedy's saying here. I think he has the right to say it. He's a Democrat, by the way, folks. I always said I will champion your right of free speech. I don't agree with him. Look, he has a right to say it. I think it's a little bonkers. I think it's a little silly. But I mean, hey, I talk about UFOs on Supernatural Saturday. It's a little bonkers. It's a little silly. But I think we all have a right to say it. You don't have to agree with it. And you know what? It might actually intrigue me to go out and listen to what this guy has to say and research it and find out. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm going, well, that's a little silly, man. You're thinking the water's turned kids trans. I think it's a little far-fetched. And it ends up possibly being right. I don't know. That's the great thing about free speech. We could sit there as people with brains that work and we go, hey, you know what? I'm not sure if I'm for it. Let me buy some books. Let me look into the research on this and actually spend some time to see if what you're saying is true. And that's a great thing about free speech. You have to sit there and offend people to seek out the truth. You're not always going to offend people, but sometimes you will to seek out the truth. People are being offended by Mr. Kennedy's words here when they shouldn't be. Quote, now YouTube has taken upon itself to actively interfere with a presidential election campaign. Yes, they have, but nothing's going to happen to them. They're big tech. Kennedy's campaign told Fox News Digital that although vaccines are not a major priority for Mr. Kennedy in this campaign, he will be happy to debate the issue with any prominent proponent on conventional view. Mr. Kennedy does not believe the attacks are coordinated. People are simply speaking out according to what they believe, Kennedy's campaign said. These beliefs are the result of the long influence of corporate money in medicine, research, media, and government. I mean, there you put a long list of things. I mean, let's be honest here. It's your own party that's sit there censoring you, man. You have to be honest with yourself. It's your party that's doing it. YouTube is not Republican. We have 36,000 subscribers roughly on the show, and some of our videos get 36 views. They're not censoring Democrats. It's amazing how Democrats are thriving on YouTube, and Republicans are constantly being censored and suppressed. Even so, there are troubling indications in published research of serious safety issues with vaccines in general. I agree with that. But especially the COVID shots. 100% agree with that. The real issue for Mr. Kennedy is regulatory capture and corporate influence over government. He is in favor of properly conducted, unbiased, transparent safety testing for all vaccines. I agree, but you can't say stuff like that. It was amazing how for like 2 years you couldn't say a lot of things about COVID, and now it's completely out there. And now the Democrats and progressive go, yeah, maybe it is from a Wuhan lab. Oh, maybe it wasn't as bad. Yeah, maybe statistically it wasn't as bad. Depending on your age, it was bad, by the way. Okay, statistically based on your age, if you were older, you had some sort of comorbidities within there, some basically the things that will lead you to death, like maybe being overweight, or maybe you had asthma, or you had something wrong with your lungs, or your smoke, or whatever it may be, that's going to increase your risk of death. And the flu does that as well. A lot of diseases will sit there and kind of exacerbate some underlying issue that you already had. So it is true that depending on whatever your age was, there kind of was a function a little bit there. I'm not going to say it's fully exponential, but there was some sort of function that will actually increase your risk of death with COVID-19. I think you'd be silly not to agree with that. But, there's a lot of people that sat there, had a 99.9% survival rate, that were sitting there masked up in their car by themselves with the air conditioning on. We got to be careful what we say here. You never know when we're going to get removed. I mean, this continues to go, but, I kind of wanted to keep this one short. We're going a little bit long today, but what do you think about the conspiracy? I mean, I would love to know what you guys think about this. And I really do mean that. You guys know I read all the comments. What do you think's going on here? Do you think there's some sort of group out there that coalesces with one another and kind of communicates and goes, look, we can't have this guy running against Joe Biden? Or, I mean, who else is running against Joe? I mean, there's not really anybody, right? I mean, there'll probably be a couple of little stingers that pop up, but I mean, why are people so gung-ho about having Joe Biden in office? Remove Trump out of the equation. Let's just remove Trump out of the equation. They are still for Joe Biden being in office, which is going to be interesting, right? Because it's going to be really fascinating. Like say, let's just be theoretical here. Say Trump is gone, right? Let's just remove it from the equation. Are they going to still push the whole race argument with DeSantis? Are they going to push the whole race argument with Vivek Ramaswamy? Because Vivek is Indian. So, I mean, how does that one play out? I'm just curious. Or Nikki Haley, who's a minority, who's Indian. Like, how's all this going to play out? I mean, are you going to call them a racist too? It's going to be interesting how this homophobe, xenophobe, all this stuff that they're calling Trump, like, does it just shift over? Because that's generally what they do, right? They did it with Bush, right? And then somehow it like disappeared under the Obama administration. And Obama was one that's going to be the great new hope, right? And unify the country and all these things. And he didn't do the damn thing. It actually made the country worse. According to Thomas Sowell, who's black, by the way, writes many books. You should read his books. But then it kind of, racism was back on again. It just kind of appeared out of nowhere. All those people that were white that voted for Barack Obama now are racist once again and voted for Trump or whatever the hell they were pushing. And then now, Joe Biden's office, now racism gone once again, or it's still there according to what we saw in our first segment with systemic racism, but it's not Joe Biden's fault. Isn't it amazing how Kamala Harris called Joe Biden racist? And multiple times, by the way, but some like now she's supporting a racist. I mean, you guys see it? Am I the only one that doesn't see it or does see it? Let me know in the comment section below, but let me hear your conspiracy theories on this. A lot of tangents today, very unorganized today. I'm on vacation. But I want to know what the hell's going on here with censoring Mr. Kennedy, not allowing him to speak because it's not the first time it's happened. It seems to continually happen. It seems like they don't want to push him out there. He has about 14% approval rating. I think he should be a lot higher than Joe. I don't know what the hell's going on with that. The guy's actually coherent. His voice is a little messed up, but that's not his fault. Joe Biden's brain's messed up. I'm not sure if that is or is not his fault, but the guy can't keep running this country because he's running it into the ground. With that being said, support the Bald Brad Show by hitting that like and subscribe button. Join us, folks. Hit that join tab down below. Not subscribe, but join tab. Become an American Patriot yourself. It's $4.99, $9.99 a month. You know where your money's going. We would really, really love for you to join us here. The perks are you get to hang out with everybody in the live chat with a cool badge, but it really does just support the show and allows us to grow, to get conservative thought and ideas out to new viewers. So if that's something that interests you, we'd love to have you join us. Come on board. With that being said, I'll see you tomorrow here on the Bald Brad Show.